What is the soul according to Christian teaching? Is it a non-physical, ghostly entity imprisoned in the body? Then do we survive death as disembodied souls? But if the soul is non-physical, how can it communicate with the physical body? And how did the soul appear according to Christian teaching? In this episode we search for answers to such questions, but not before starting with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. The content of this episode is an adaptation of chapter 6 in this book, Artificial Intelligence, Reincarnation and Resurrection. You will remember, I hope, from episode 2, that physicalists cannot explain the nature of consciousness or the relationship between the mind and the brain. For we cannot simply reduce the mind to a state or function of the brain. In the words of McGinn, I quote, "We need an additional faculty if we are going to understand the mind-brain link. What we learn of the brain is condemned to be the wrong kind of thing to explain consciousness." This additional faculty for understanding mind-brain interaction is explained in the Christian view of human nature by stating that the soul or the mind is the form of the body. In this episode, I'll try to explain what this means. But before we start talking about the soul, I need to make an important clarification. Whenever you hear of a biblical view of something, you should be aware that you face a certain tradition in interpreting the Bible on that issue. For instance, if you hear that the biblical view of human nature is that of body, soul, and spirit, because there are certain verses in the Bible saying so, you should be aware that this is one way of interpreting those Bible verses. When we speak of the Christian view of something, we cannot just put up a few verses and say, this is what Christianity teaches on this issue. Therefore, I need to say that I follow a classic tradition in explaining human nature, namely the Catholic tradition. It follows the way the Church Fathers have understood it, and Catholics consider that this view has reached its highest form in the thought of Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. The school of thought he grounded is called Thomism, and it helps us build a solid philosophical foundation for understanding the mind-body interaction, the mystery of consciousness, and the way we survive death. But even though this is Catholic thought, I believe that all Christians can learn from it and respond to modern criticism on the nature of the soul. The Catholic Catechism emphasizes that human nature consists of a single substance. I quote, "The unity of soul and body is so profound that one has to consider the soul to be the form of the body. That is, it is because of its spiritual soul that the body, made of matter, becomes a living human body. Spirit and matter in man are not two natures united, but rather their union forms a single nature." In other words, traditional Christian teaching is that human nature consists of one substance, which includes a physical and a non-physical or spiritual component in close union. I obviously use the philosophical term for substance here, not that of chemistry. A substance in philosophy is defined as something that exists by itself and has properties, but is not itself a property. For instance, a tree is a substance, but a leaf is not, for it is a part of a tree. Trees, dogs, and human beings are substances, while leaves, eyes, and fingers are not. Aquinas expressed the Christian view of human nature as an adaptation of the philosophy of Aristotle, called hylomorphism. This name comes from Greek, in which hyle is matter and morphe is form. But don't worry, Aquinas did not Hellenize Christian thought. Rather, he Christianized Greek philosophy by using Aristotle's categories to teach Christian doctrine. In other words, he did not propose a Christian Greek syncretism, but expressed the truths of theology in the most appropriate philosophical language of his time. This way of expressing Christian doctrine by the use of Greek categories should not bother Christians of any particular tradition, since the doctrine of the Trinity itself was formulated by using the Neoplatonic categories of ousia and hypostasis, as you remember from the previous episode, by the Church Fathers in the 4th century AD. In order to grasp Aquinas' vision on human nature as a union of body and soul, we must first understand what he means by the two fundamental concepts of matter and form. Following the principles laid down by Aristotle, any existing thing, whether living or non-living, can be seen as made of matter and form. If we start from non-living things and take, for example, this limestone rock, its matter is calcium carbonate. The chemical substance called calcium carbonate can exist only under a certain form, as for instance a limestone rock, a piece of marble, a piece of chalk, or a calcite crystal. All these particular objects have calcium carbonate as essential matter and can be known and studied only when they take one of these concrete forms. Form is the concrete individual way in which matter exists, and matter can exist only as configured by form. In the language of Thomistic philosophy, form is more than just physical shape of a thing. It is rather the essence that makes it that kind of thing. For instance, the form of a chair is not just its particular physical shape, but its essence of being a particular kind of furniture, something you can sit on. This particular chair is a spinning office chair. It has wheels and is black. This one is made of steel and has a textile covering and has 4 legs, while this one is made of wood and is brown. These variables that differ from one chair to another are called accidents. Size, color, material, and the number of legs are accidents. They can differ from one chair to the next and thus do not define the essence or form of the chair, that of being something you can sit on. I hope you get the idea. Both matter and form are necessary for something to be a particular object. The form of a chair cannot exist by itself. It always needs to be associated with matter, whether it is metal, wood, or plastic. You always need a concrete chair to speak of its form. So form and matter can only exist together. In the case of living beings, matter and form correspond to their body and soul. Plants and animals have bodies made up of many organic and inorganic substances, and the element that organizes these substances in the form of a flower, a tree, or a dog is the soul of that living being. Think of the difference between these two beings. They look the same, but one of them was heated at over 100 degrees Celsius and now is a dead seed. However, they look the same and have the same chemical composition. The soul is the potential each of these two seeds have. The living seed can germinate and form a new plant, while the other one can only decay. This different potential of this seed is what Thomistic philosophy calls its soul. Now, the soul of a plant differs from that of an animal by the fact that the plant soul possesses only the potential to feed, grow, and multiply, while the animal soul has the extra abilities or powers to feel and move. For this reason, we say that the soul of the plant is vegetative, while that of an animal is sensitive. The soul defines the essence or reason for existing of a particular lump of matter, and also the element that makes it a member of a species. For instance, if we analyze the differences between a cat and a dog, from the point of view of the organic and inorganic substances that compose their body, they are almost identical. The same amino acids, fats, carbohydrates, water, and minerals are found in the constitution of both animals. So what makes them different? It is the way that their organic substances are organized. The element that arranges the organic substances as a cat or a dog is the soul of that animal. The soul shapes the matter either as an animal that can climb trees or as one that can bark. In a way, Thomistic philosophy anticipated the existence of the genetic code, the fact that there is something of an informational nature that establishes the nature of each species and commands the building of the individual organism from organic substances common to the whole animal kingdom. But in Thomistic terms, the soul is more than that. A dead animal no longer has the potential to fulfill the functions of a living animal because it no longer has that organizing principle called the soul, despite the fact that its DNA is still there in every cell of the dead body. Once the plant or the animal dies, it ceases to exist as a living organism, which we express by affirming that its soul does not survive death. The dead animal passes into non-existence. It does not reincarnate and is not resurrected. If our soul were mortal like that of animals, we would follow a physicalist view of human nature. In order to get the right view of the human soul, which is different from both physicalism and Eastern religions, we need to consider our position in the hierarchy of God's creation: non-living matter, plants, animals, human beings, and angels. The highest category of creation are the angels, the non-physical or spiritual beings defined as pure forms. I'll not refer to the view that angels cannot exist, for we cannot see them and science cannot study them. I've already said in episode 1 that such views just follow different assumptions, those of scientists. In the hierarchy of creation, human beings have an intermediate nature between that of animals and that of angels, resembling partly the nature of animals and partly that of angels. We are the lowest of spiritual creatures and the highest of physical creatures, and live at the interface of the two worlds, participating in both. We resemble animals by having a physical body configured by the soul, but also angels by having a non-physical and immortal soul. So on the one hand, we are inferior to angels, for our soul configures a physical body and draws its knowledge from the physical world through the senses. And on the other hand, we are superior to animals by the fact that we have a non-physical soul, which is the true seat of reason and will, and makes us capable of having a personal relationship with God. According to Christian teaching, the human soul is created by God at conception, configures the body, and survives death. But be aware that we are not angels trapped in a physical body. This is not the right Christian view on human nature. We are not prisoners in this body, and the body is not just a mere instrument or sheath of the soul from which it must be released as from a prison. The special status of the human soul is deduced from the creation account in Genesis, which states that the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. The breath of life stands out for the soul of a non-physical nature, created individually by God at conception. This dignity of our soul, of being a special creation of God, makes it able to survive death. At this point we can connect with what I said in previous episodes, that the mind is not just the result of brain evolution over millions of years, but a special creation of God. It has a non-physical nature and gives us the capacity to relate to God. Likewise, consciousness did not simply emerge from the neural activity of the brain, but is a feature of the non-physical mind, and as such cannot be replicated by physical means. No matter how much progress we may see in the neurosciences, we will not be able to understand the processes of the mind, that is our most intimate thoughts, feelings, memories, and desires, as products of electrical fluxes between the billions of neurons in our cerebral cortex, or as encoded in the connections between the neurons, for their ground is non-physical. In conclusion, the body is not an autonomous machine, but matter configured by the soul and kept alive and active by the soul, so that communication between them is possible in both directions. The body, and implicitly the brain, does not have a separate life, independent of the soul, but is formed by the soul in order to communicate its life to the body and through the body. And the complexity of our brain is not the result of millions of years of evolution, but the result of being configured by a human immortal soul. The fact that advocates of evolutionism point to an increasing brain size as we move up the scale of evolution is not necessarily a proof of evolution, but can be taken as an indication that the more operations a soul is capable of, the bigger brain it needs. In other words, the human brain is bigger than that of mammals in proportion to body size, because the human soul has the additional quality of being a rational soul. In the remaining part of this episode, I want to mention the way Thomas Aquinas explains the fulfillment of human nature through the argument of the four causes. I find it very useful for our discussion of human nature, and I want to share it with you. The argument says that any object or living being is determined by its material, formal, efficient, and final cause. We have already met the first two as matter and form. The third, the efficient cause, is the agent that brings a particular thing into existence. And the final cause is the ultimate goal it serves, its reason for existing. For physical things, the four causes are easy to understand. Here are some examples. My pencil has as material cause graphite and wood, the chemical substances of which it is made. The formal cause is the plan of its designer, to be 6 inches long, with 6 faces and painted in red. The efficient cause is the factory that produced it. And the final cause is the purpose of pencil production, that of enabling us to write on paper. The house in which I live has as material cause a variety of construction materials. The formal cause is the building plan, the efficient cause is the construction crew that actually built it, and the final cause is that my family could live in it. For this laptop, the four causes can be formulated as follows. The material cause is the substances from which it is made, metals, semiconductors, plastic, glass, etc. The formal cause is the plan of the team that designed it in this way, with this shape, memory, and size. The efficient cause is the factory that actually produced it and whose name it bears. And the final cause is to enable people to use it for multiple purposes, including for editing this video. When we consider the four causes of living beings and try to formulate them from a physicalist perspective, only the first two can be easily identified. Physicalists could consider the material cause the multitude of organic and inorganic substances that compose the body of a plant or an animal, and the formal cause to be its DNA. Since the existence of God is denied, the efficient cause of a living being must be Darwinian evolution. That is a long process of random mutations and natural selection by which they adapted to the environment and became as we see them today. The final cause is a complete mystery or a meaningless discussion for physicalists. Living beings simply exist as a long process of evolution and survival of the fittest. Human beings are considered the pinnacle that evolution has reached on our planet, but they do not have a final cause. The goal of our existence is not given to us from the outside, but we created it ourselves. Remember episode 6 on transhumanism. But as free as we are to formulate a final cause for our life, we can hardly define one and keep living for experiencing daily little pleasures, fulfilling our duties and raising our children. All of this will be forgotten after 3 generations at most, and will be extinguished as if we have never lived. I hope you remember the point I made in episode 1 when I showed you this picture. From a Christian point of view, the 4 causes of human beings can be formulated as follows. The material cause is the totality of the organic and inorganic substances that constitute our body, and the formal cause is our soul. In the efficient cause, we can identify a primary cause, which is God, for He created our soul, and the secondary cause as our parents. The final cause is the purpose and ultimate fulfillment of our existence, that of reaching everlasting communion with God. Jesus says in the Gospel according to John, I quote, "This is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent." Our final cause is a relationship with our Creator. Thomas Aquinas says it in more elaborate terms, I quote, "It is impossible for any created good to constitute man's happiness, for happiness is the perfect good, which satisfies the appetite altogether. Else it would not be the last end, if something yet remained to be desired. Now the object of the will is the universal good, just as the object of the intellect is the universal true. Hence it is evident that nothing can satisfy man's will save the universal good. This is to be found not in any creature, but in God alone, because every creature has goodness by participation. Wherefore God alone can satisfy the will of man, according to the words of Psalm 102, verse 5, "Who satisfieth thy desire with good things." Therefore God alone constitutes man's happiness. St. Augustine's famous words in the introduction to his Confessions surely fit well here. I quote, "Thou hast made us for thyself, and our heart is restless until it repose in thee." In the next episode, I'll speak about a great problem I already mentioned in the previous episode, the problem of sin, its meaning and solution. Until then, please do something that costs you nothing. Please subscribe and share this information. God bless you.